All right, April 18th, we are on our 21st episode, Austin. The podcast is of drinking age now. Welcome back to
Wow.
GTMN.
It can vote and drink.
It can walk and drink. That's right. Well, you had quite an exciting morning. It's been a busy week for both of us, I think. But what happened? What happened with your bike? Tell me all about it.
First of all, people who don't listen don't understand that me and Pranav are constantly trading exceptions between the Thursdays when we regularly schedule this to Saturday and Sunday. It seems like something always comes up on Thursday for one of us. And so we tried to do Saturday today, which is normally fine. And as you know, you've been training for a half iron. I've been training for, sorry, a half marathon. I've been training for an Ironman. And
Different levels.
hey, we're all here together, and I'm going to be running with you in November.
Yep.
No, so I had this amazing bike ride planned, and I was 40 miles into the 60-mile bike, and there was this giant pothole, and my back tire went right in it, and I did not bring a tube with me. So I thought, well, first I tried to
Oh
see if
man.
anybody had a tube, but the problem with these tires is, or the frames, like the rims, are really, really thick. So you need a very specific type of tube to go in the rim, because you have the tire, which is the thing that you think of on the outside of the tire. Then you have the tube, which goes in the tire to inflate it, unless you have tubeless tires, which is a separate thing. And then you have the rim, kind of like a car. You have like the rim, you have the tire. The only difference is the bike,
Yep.
you have a tube in the middle. So I didn't have the right tube. And my buddy who was riding with me, he went to actually a bike stop that was like a mile away and tried to get one, and it wasn't the right size. So after like an hour and a half of screwing around, I gave up and called a Lyft. And I sent you a photo from the Lyft of my wonderful bike in the back of the car. So it was a longer than planned.
Oh man.
It's supposed to be like a 4-hour afternoon. I was supposed to be back by 12. Plenty of time for our 2 p.m. meeting. But then, now it's 3 o'clock. So I'm a couple hours behind.
Well, you got a nice little workout done, and sometimes, it's nice to run into real problems and figure things out. So, well, I'm glad you did not get hurt
Well, I can't
because
tire
it
yet.
it's yeah.
Well, I can tell you how to change a tire,
Um,
but I can't change a tire.
all right, okay. So, I mean, it's actually interesting that we had to do this on Saturday because some big news dropped yesterday,
Yes.
including Claude Design. Have you played around with it? I barely got like 5 minutes to look at it yesterday afternoon, but Figma's stock is down 7% yesterday, and kind of crazy. You know what was funny? I saw the founder of Deal make a post on X about, "Hey, Dario, can you please not do anything with payroll? Can you let us be?" And it's because Claude has a job post out for people products and a PM or an engineering leader to build people products. So, it's crazy how much we talk about Claude on this podcast, even though it's all about go-to-market. But like, they are frankly just kind of bulldozing through a whole bunch of verticals. So I have lots of thoughts on the implications for go-to-market for Claude Design, but I'm curious what you thought of it. Have you played around with it? Have you had a chance to kind of think deeply about this?
Started to. Like, we're living in interesting times, right? The question is, who is responsible for design and where does that happen? Recently in the marketing teams that I'm running and working with, there's a very common workflow, which is like design and other people work in Figma. And now there's this ability to pull Figma designs and recreate it through HTML or other sources because they kind of opened up a node level understanding of a Figma design. So like, what's pretty cool is for teams that have been using Figma historically for a long time and are versed in Figma, the ability to go in and pull designs, really, really functional, great designs, and turn that into code is super easy. I think the example I might have given a couple weeks ago was I'm doing some fractional CMO work at A2B, and our team has taken like massive canvases of work for our partners that we work with in the transportation sector. And, Claude just turns that into HTML and publishes it to HubSpot. And I think like the same thing will happen with Anthropic, Claude Design. The question is like, will designers switch? Is there a material switching cost? I imagine if they build like a Figma to Claude converter that takes your entire asset catalog and converts it, then probably, yeah, the activation energy is so low that it doesn't matter. But right now, I'm kind of the mindset that it's like I'm myself myself am not a designer, and now increasingly I'm designing with AI tools. So I'm actually kind of tool agnostic. Like another example would be like I often use this tool called Excalidraw to like do my diagrams for
I
Substack and all
love
that
it.
stuff.
Yeah,
It's like, do I use Excalidraw? Do I use Claude Design? Do I use Figma? So yeah, I mean, probably not great for Figma because it's just like another competitor. And it's not very defensible to say like, oh, you should use Figma because it's a place where designers do work. But guess what? Also, AI is converting all this stuff in the back end to like code because that's ultimately what happens. So I don't know. I don't know what happens to them. I understand why their stock is down, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. So like there's a good post I saw about this, which is like as Claude creates more and more tools, at what point does the quality of these tools start to drop because there's just too much surface area? Or will AI actually help for the first time ever make an AI company that can manage 30 different surface areas because the administrative burden is actually like not human anymore. Claude can manage itself.
yeah,
So for all the administrative upkeep of keeping tools alive and working and fixing bugs, all that can just be
totally,
federated to AI. So I don't know. I mean,
totally.
like what's to stop them from building into every vertical?
Yeah, my take is the latter, to be honest. And for there's going to be a surface level that's just available in Claude that like gets you through 80-90% of the work. And in some cases, you'll publish from Claude to Figma or to Canva, and they built those connectors, right? So along with the launch that they announced yesterday, they do say that, hey, you can take the output from Claude Design and push it into Figma or to Canva to take it to completion. And so, that's, I think, what's going to happen. And it's kind of similar to their, strategy with Excel and with slides, right? They create, they let you like work in Excel and then have like some superpowers within Excel, right? Same thing for Docs, same thing for PPT, now same thing for Figma and Canva. So I do think that they're going to go pretty horizontal on the types of things that most knowledge workers are doing and get you 80% of the way there. So it's interesting. And what I'm gonna do for our company. So we have a design system for our customer facing documents, right? So whether that's an existing customer, whether that's a sales or a prospect, whether that's a office hours we're doing, like any type of stuff. And this makes it possible for me to actually just set up a design system for the whole company. And now I don't have to worry about what it looks like. I know that it's going to be, well designed. And we were kind of already doing it with a skill in Claude, right? And now they've made it a little bit more structured. And I think that's how people are going to use it. So it is going to have a meaningful impact because without this, you would have, used Figma, Canva, what have you. And I think a lot of the, basic stuff is just going to happen directly in Claude. So going from an idea to an asset or, high fidelity like sales enablement or, even like very basic marketing presentations, lots of lean execution is now possible for very, very small, marketing and sales teams.
100%. And they also, I don't know if this was on
Yeah.
your list. They also release routines. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I didn't fully understand routines, and I know what was the news there? Tell me more about it.
Yeah, we have a growing collection of what do we want to call them, like Claude surface areas or Claude attributes. And what I think is really interesting is that all the things that Claude has released help Claude be better and are these primitives that if you understand and use, you can like wield AI way more powerfully. Like for example, in the very, very early days, there was this concept of context and like people knew what context was, but like we didn't know how to manage context. And then came along the Claude MD file, and then came along memory files, and then came along skills. Skills are just markdown that has a predefined, rule set or predefined thing to follow so that when you're repeating tasks, you don't have to type a bunch of stuff in there and it can reduce the context window. And then more recently, we talked about remote control, which is the ability to like control Claude from Claude code. And here there's dispatch, which is the same thing for cowork. So I'll talk about routines in a second, but like they're releasing all these structural ways of kind of thinking about AI, which are totally novel. Like none of these things existed in AI 3 years ago. They've released them. They've kind of taught their users how to use them as a way of getting more value out of the tool. And routines is really interesting because if you think about it, you and I come from the world of probabilistic and deterministic, and routines is actually in this model, right? So in attribution, deterministic is like you click the thing and like we know who you are, and probabilistic is we don't really know who you are, so we're doing some type of matching or we're trying to figure figure it out through IP address or things. So, in one case, you're very certain of the outcome. There's something that is physically being done. And in another case, there's something that kind of is being done, and you're taking some liberty in getting to that assessment. And AI follows the exact same mental model, which is, I think, part of the reason why we talk about this a lot on our show is because the same kind of mental model for how we talk about attribution is the mental model you should use when thinking about AI. And
Sure.
AI is a probabilistic model. It is literally like a random walk, except it can be less random depending on the things you give it, and it can be more random depending on the things you don't give it. And routines and workflows and crons are representative of this, right? You can imagine if your computer every day you were to write in code, hey, run this script, this Python script that does something. That is a very deterministic outcome. It's going to do the exact same thing every single time. It might fail, but presuming it works, it produces the exact same result every single time. So like if you were like, hey, hit the Salesforce API and give me a list of the first 100 results, like that's a deterministic outcome. And if you ask AI to do that task, it's going to go out and write code or kind of hit the API in a different way every single time. So it might do it differently on each session of the AI. Skills make that better because skills can be combined with a script. They can say, hey, when you run this skill, also you're just running the script that we've already built. So now it's a blend of deterministic and probabilistic. The probabilistic piece being the session calling the script. And so a routine is really fascinating because it diverges from what everybody else is doing right now, which is a cron. People are managing workflows largely through crons, which is just like, a time-based system that triggers something. A routine is a time-based Claude session. So it took the kind of understanding of a cron job with a deterministic outcome and applied the exact same thing to Claude. So now a routine can kind of wake up, it can call a session of Claude and perform a task at any given time and then write the results to any different place that you want. The thing it can't do yet very well is you can't do call and response. So I can't like, hey, wake up and like run this routine and then wait for me to come back to you. It has to like produce a result. But
Can I ask why is it different from a scheduled task in co-work and code?
These are kind of all the same things, by the way. I think it's a great point. Like, how is this different? How technically a cron that calls a Claude session is a routine. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think Claude is trying to define ways of using AI in really structured terms to educate their
Sure.
audience on how to do things. Like we're all trying to figure out how to build together. Like a
Yeah.
really relevant example is Clawbot, right? They invented
Yep.
this idea of like a soul MD and a memory file system to give
Yeah.
agents life, right? So that they feel more realistic. These are just like ideas, right? And so what's
Yeah.
interesting is like we're going to see more ideas coming out of Claude that will make AI better and even easier to use. And this is one of them.
Got it. I gotta go play with routines, and frankly, I feel so behind on OpenClaw. I still haven't set it up, and we talked about Perplexity Computer last week. Like, there's so much I need to play with. I keep thinking I need to run Claude not on my machine, but on a system that's always running, and I feel way behind, and I'm definitely getting some FOMO from people who have it all set up, and it's doing wonders for them. Okay. I want to pivot the conversation for a little bit to this topic that I've actually been thinking about for the last week or so. And there's we as an entire industry, we talk about Claude and automation and AI so much, right? And it's changing so many things about sort of marketing and go to market and advertising. I get it, but then I got curious about how do human beings spend time, right? You went on like a bike ride for whatever 4 hours this morning, right? Were you listening to music at that time, or you prefer not to like
That's
partake in
true.
anything? You're just
The rest of the cars
enjoying the
zipping by.
world.
I do
All right,
sometimes.
okay.
Sometimes I do, but not today.
Okay, cool. So I ran some research just over the course of the morning today, and a couple of things stood out to me. So first was the average attention that or the duration that consumers focus on a single digital task has continued to come down over the last like 2 decades. So in 2004, the average focus on a specific task lasted for about 150 seconds. Now the average, in 2012, the average was 75 seconds. And in like 2026, the average is closer to like 47 seconds. So that was one interesting finding, that just like you and me sitting here and recording this podcast for 40 minutes, we're already way past the average, right? Like the average that a human being just does one thing on a digital screen is like 50 seconds, and then they switch to something else, and then they switch to something else, and then they switch to something else, which is like wild. All right, but then let's keep going. So consumers obviously prefer this bite-sized way of thinking about life, right? Whether it's work or whether it's personal. Short form content, so TikTok, Reels, what have you, accounts for 90% of all internet traffic. All internet traffic, 90%. And then what's happened is media. So, if you think about music videos, you think about films, the average length of a shot in those formats has shrunk to 4 seconds to maintain engagement. So
Oh
this
my.
like every single thing in a digital format has shifted to this like shorter and shorter time span, which is kind of wild, right? And you think about it, like our show probably has more views on our shorts than on the full sort of episode, right? Which is which is what this is talking about. And at the same time, I'm going to keep going, and I'll pause for reactions
Good,
from
good,
you.
good, please.
There's research from the American Psychological Association that shows that frequent switching between these tasks increases stress, well, obviously, and
Definitely.
reduces the overall productivity by about 40%.
Hmm.
So, and I'm thinking about after and the segue here is like we're talking about all this AI stuff, right? And even the AI stuff is like we run a Claude session and then we go do something else, and then we come back and then we go do something else, right? It's like we're constantly like setting off these AIs to do different things, and Slack and Linear and email and then meetings and Zoom. And I feel net, while we're getting more productive, we're also just unconsciously, subconsciously getting less productive because of all this switching and this, the space to really just think and marinate and increase the flow state that we all want to be in. And it's just going away. So I'm gonna pause there, see if you have any reactions, and I want to like talk about what this means also from a marketing standpoint.
Well, I don't want to make this political, but there was an amazing New York Times guest piece that I read this last weekend, and I'll give you the headline so that people can find it, but I don't want to talk about the headline. The headline was, "Why aren't the kids out protesting Trump?" But the whole article was not about just that. It was about what is happening to our society that's leading to these conditions in which people are indifferent. And I think a huge part of it is the fact that you just described, the fact that kids are suddenly losing their attention spans and are cognitively declining. And there's a lot of research that shows this, by the way. This isn't me just making stuff up. Kids and young adults and even ourselves are losing our capacity for deep work and cognitive capability because of social media and the infinite scroll. And there's like a lot more podcasts out there. There's a lot more news out there on trying to stop the cycle and the habit of scrolling and short form media. But you're right, like our work is now becoming more and more like that. And so I think in a way there's this counterculture that might develop. I think it is developing around getting out of that mindset, getting out of that routine. We talked about this maybe a week or two ago. Substack is maybe becoming, in an interesting way, a place where people who are kind of protesting social media and protesting the mind rot that's coming with AI, where they go. Like the power of writing is becoming a weapon to combat this, right? Like if you can't think for yourself, then you're not really human anymore. But, like the tobacco industry before this, and now like social media, I think the distractiveness that we have is just another civilizational problem that humans are going to have to encounter and deal with. And I think many people will not be able to and will be manipulated by corporations taking advantage of them. And a lot of people will figure out that these things are harmful, and they'll figure out a way to better regulate it, getting the benefits of AI while not letting it take too much over you. For what it's worth, like I feel this really personally right now, where it's like on one hand, Claude is so exciting and AI is so powerful, and I just want to spend all my time doing stuff because it's so fun. It almost feels like a video game. At the same time,
Yeah.
that's deeply scary because I know, for example, my early 20s when I was like playing video games, I was like, wow, this is like a huge mind rot. Like I am on this thing all the time. I got to regulate. So, everything in moderation. And so it'll be this question of like what will people do to regulate how much that takes from them? My hope though is that in the next, call it 2 years or so, the technology continues to improve where it doesn't require us to be as distracted. Because right now, I like we've talked about this. I have like when I do Claude work, AI work, I have like 6 terminals up on each screen, and I am literally attention deficit maxing. Right? It's like run one, run the next one, check the other one, go to the next one. And I'm doing so much work, but it's also at the end of the day, I feel deeply depleted and like, what have I done? Like my life is ending from this. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's really complicated. We're in a really early time. So, it's almost like the same thing's happening with Ozempic. Like everybody's on it, everybody's trying it, and we're all gonna learn together where this goes.
No, very interesting point, right? It's like instead of solving the root cause, we're kind of taking the easy way out with GLPs, at least like the mass population, right? I'm not talking about people who have real sort of health issues, but it's
There's there's an
yeah.
amazing article on Substack called "The Ozempification of Everything," and it talks about this, which is like there are a lot of themes that are related here, like taking the shortcut in AI. I think society and America as a whole wanting to take shortcuts to wealth and generation because, the prospects are hard and it's hard to find a job and it's hard to make money and prices have gone up, wages have decreased. And so the Ozempification as a theme for like kind of cheating your way out of fixing your body
Mm,
is the same thing for cheating your way out of making money the hard way, but that's because of the system and the constraints, right? Like wages are no
yeah.
longer enough to support a middle class lifestyle, and so people are looking for these make it rich kind of schemes. That's why VC is taking off. That's why Kalshi is such a big deal. So it's like it's fascinating that like this idea of the Zempification of stuff actually pervades not only what we're talking about, but many, many layers of how society as a whole is operating right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other sort of through line to this conversation was if you now if you think about how do people spend their time digitally, right? So there's if you look at 2025 and 2026 data, on average in a given week, video consumption, so across all devices, including connected TVs and mobile and everything, is about 43 hours, right? 43 hours of video consumption. And television out of that, which is both streaming or CTV, is about 20 hours. Smartphone video is like 6 hours. Tablet is like 4 hours. Social media is like 15 to 16 hours outside of like video. So roughly about 2 hours every day. Gaming is 12 hours. And then you have all the general browsing and tasks of like 35 plus hours. And if you think about all of these different things, right? Like how much of time is spent like actively, with AI. And what I mean by that is like a direct interaction with a ChatGPT, a Claude, a Gemini, or whatever. On average, it's not more than about 30 minutes a day amongst all of this other time that is spent on entertainment, broadly speaking, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is we talk a lot about how AI is going to change everything, right? AI is going to change shopping, AI is going to change productivity, AI is going to change like how you do discovery and so on and so forth. But like if I take a step back and think about, do you think those 43 hours of video consumption, those 12 hours of gaming consumption, the 15 to 16 hours of social media consumption, like that's not going away because of AI? Right? People are actually going to maybe spend more time escaping from the reality and spend more time on video and social and gaming and getting out there in the real world. And so as marketers, the lesson for me is like, hey, don't just keep optimizing for AI and agents. You actually are going to realize that you have to optimize for video and gaming and social media and the real world more to be able to grab the attention because that's where the attention's going. And I think more and more human beings are going to sort of gravitate and escape from, their general sort of work life to immerse themselves, even though it sounds very like negative and dystopian, but that's the reality that I'm thinking about that maybe the implications aren't as, go AI first and optimize for AEO and GEO and all that fun stuff. I don't know that that's going to be the real needle mover for marketers. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, as a marketer, I think AI will help marketers be more efficient. I don't think video is going anywhere.
Yep.
And I think there's a relationship between stress, anxiety, and your human condition, and how much you rely on these as a tool for coping with that hopelessness and sometimes that stress. And, it's really sad, but especially in like lower socioeconomic circles, that's where like, infinite scrolling is really, really harmful. And so it is actually biased towards the people who actually would benefit the most from not having to be on those platforms. And it reinforces the cycle where, you have some hopelessness or it's hard, life is challenging and you're not able to get things you want and you have a tough job or whatever. And then in order to kind of feel better about that, you rely on social media, which then makes you feel worse about yourself. And I think that's a big reason why we see huge depression rates in the United States. I know, and like this is kind of the thing that all marketers have known for a while is like our job is to help optimize capital or optimize an outcome for our business. And oftentimes that means taking people's attention. And that is the name of the game. So I don't know if there's a way to like ethically market right now. All the time and money and energy that you spend trying to get somebody to pay attention to you is what causes this cycle. But I would argue, a big fraction is not corporate media. It's what I'd call like the influencer maxing media, right? Like I'm
Mm,
watching videos of cats doing flips. I'm watching AI videos of random, BS. Like that serves no purpose. I mean, it's good, I guess, for TikTok and YouTube because influencers or people are creating that and that content's being viewed and they're paying those creators, but it like provides no net value. There's no outcome out of it. A great example
yeah.
is, there's this chef I follow on YouTube, and she's probably made like $20 million, and she was a chef before, and she's a chef
Nice.
now. And have I like used any of her recipes watching her videos? No, I just
But you
like
feel good watching them. I
exactly.
know, I know. Yeah. Entertainment. Like that's what we're all gonna like we're really gonna become Wally style bloated human beings on spaceships.
Well,
Okay, sorry, that went a little dark. Go ahead.
Pranav, one question for you though. The thing that I think about a lot is like, okay, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you didn't have short form media, you're watching TV shows, sitcoms, like actual, movies and podcasts maybe, and all those could consume a lot of time. I think the big difference though is that because short form media is so quick and easy, it's filling in a lot of the gaps where like watching a show or watching TV wouldn't have been okay. But I don't know. Growing up, my parents watched a ton of TV, like probably as much
Totally.
TV
Yep, yep, yep.
now as a human would watch on YouTube or TikTok, but we just weren't measuring it. So I also just wonder about how much of this is the fact that it's like short form and not necessarily about like the intensity and frequency of watching, but like the style of it because it's drawing people's attention away and like declining their cognitive abilities.
I mean, think about it, right? I don't know if this happens to you or not. I was watching a Warriors game last night, and we lost, unfortunately, but didn't make it to the real playoffs. And throughout the game, like I had this urge of like picking up my phone and like doing something on my phone, right? That's the addiction that we all have to our devices. And that is the cost that you are exactly right that 20 years ago we were still maybe spending as much time on screens, but this like constant switching from this thing to this thing and then on my iPad and then my work and then let me check my Slack and then open it's just like it's kind of crazy that we have become this generation. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. And I'm not even that like, I don't have TikTok. I don't do, reels on Instagram and what have you. But still, it's quite interesting how attention is so fragmented. Well, on that front, a couple of other pieces of news that are happening this week. So apparently Meta is now going to overtake Google in ad revenue. So this has taken them, like 20 years to get to this point, but they are forecasted to reach 240 billion in net worldwide ad revenue, and Google's forecasted to be like close to 240 at the end of this year. So all of the video, right, short form video from Instagram and all of the short form stuff from social media is finally taking over all the search stuff, which is kind of interesting. And I think YouTube is probably growing faster than even Meta in terms of like the overall growth rate. So at some point in the next like 5 or 10 years, maybe YouTube, helps Google overtake Meta again. But that's sort of an interesting, you know, landmark moment for the advertising industry.
Crazy. I mean, I don't give Meta enough credit, even though as a a marketer, I know how much companies spend on them, and I know their platform, and I know how they work. But it's still like I don't know. Isn't in my mind when I think of Meta, I think of Facebook. I'm like, it's all boomers on there now, but it's not. They got
Uh,
Instagram. They have so many surface areas, and so when I think of I just think of Facebook, and I'm like, how is it so big? But it's not.
it's all
But I would
Instagram.
argue.
It's all Instagram. Yep.
Yeah, but boomers do look at a lot of Facebook, so they're propping up the old Facebook channel.
Totally. And they launched something new this week, which I was doing my research this morning. So Meta launched this thing. You know what conversion API is. So this is basically like a, server to server integration between your first party data and Meta's first party data. So you send signals to say that, hey, here are, the email addresses and the names and the IP addresses of all the conversions that we've seen. So you can, find more people like them and also do better attribution if I send you this CAPI data. They announced a one-click CAPI because CAPI is like still kind of complicated and technical to implement. And so they launched this one-click CAPI, and I was like scratching my head. How the heck would a one-click CAPI even work? Like you still have to send some data from your server side to Meta. And so I ran my research this morning, and it's all smoke and mirrors. The one-click is basically just taking your FB CLID, so your click ID from Facebook, from your browser session, and then just passing it back from Meta. So that's all it is. There's nothing else to it. So it's just picking it up from the pixel and sending it server side rather than, just the browser side. That's all that was. And I'm like, really? You launched this as a feature? You're calling it one-click CAPI? Like it's complete nonsense to call it CAPI because it's not server side at all. So, and a lot of people on Meta, on Twitter and on LinkedIn are talking about, oh, this is going to be so amazing. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's going to be pretty bad. So yeah, that was
It
interesting.
it's gonna be bad, but it's not gonna look bad because, frankly, this is just a great way for Meta to take more credit for things that they don't deserve. I mean, the whole
Yep.
purpose of CAPI is to have a lot of signals, not only so that Facebook can get the right amount of credit, but so that you can optimize towards the right people. And so if they're saying, "Hey, we have a single click CAPI program with just the FB click ID," I don't know. I mean, they're basically saying if we have this FB click ID, we don't need any of the information from what happened from when they clicked to when they purchased because we can kind of reverse engineer it on our side and figure it all out. Which means like they're probably going to use some type of browser app session to figure out the device and figure out the IP address and location, all that stuff, which, is a technically reasonable feat. But I think the whole purpose of sending first party data back to Meta was not only to make it better for them to find more people, but to be really, really clear when attribution is given. And I have now implemented, CAPI programs for Meta, for Google, for TikTok, for Reddit. So I understand all these really, really well. This is like some of the core of marketing technology. And I don't buy it. And Meta CAPI is hard to implement for what it's worth, but I would argue like doing it the good old fashioned way is way more reliable, and it's never been easier with tools and technology. Like this used to be super, super hard a couple years ago. I tell the story all the time. Me, Ian McComber at Ramp, we had a data scientist, we had 2 engineers, and like we worked the entire summer to set up this MetaCAPI program at Ramp. And then, like it took a lot of work to maintain. There were always problems, and we were using DBT and high touch with Segment to collect the data. We're modeling in DBT, and then we're feathering it out with high touch. There's still a lot of work to manage because all these things break, or like a model breaks, or some other instrumentation breaks. However, today you can do pretty much all that. The only thing that stops you from completely using AI is mental switching costs, which we just talked about. Like, so with
Mhm.
one team I'm working with, we're implementing MetaCAPI, and we have a data engineer who kind of can write DBT code, but can also write some front end code. And even though he's not working on MetaCAPI exclusively, having him there is really, really helpful because he just understands the DBT surface layer way better than I do. So like if I want to go fix something, I can make small changes to existing models and I can do that with Claude, but I'm not really qualified to like build our entire DIM model, right? It's the same thing on web. Like we have a web engineer. I can write a PR if it's something small, but he should review it. So what we're seeing now with Metacapi is like you kind of still should have the same team players, but you really only need them for like a fractional amount compared to what they used to be. But anyways, like
I
this gets away.
completely agree. On this news, I wish they had just called it like something, like Pixel
Right.
Plus instead of calling it Cappy. Like, just
Well,
don't
Cappy's simple.
dilute the importance of of what CAPI is, and they have done pretty much that, which is kind of frustrating. So lots of people are going to go implement it, fantastic, and they're going to think that they're actually sending clear server-side signals, and they are not. And they're going to give up on like the actual CAPI implementation. That's the downside of this launch, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, so OpenAI is finally launching ChatGPT's ad manager in a self-serve capacity,
Wow.
and they've brought the floor down from $250,000 of investment to $50,000. This was reported on April 10th, and they're also launching CPC and CPA-based ads, so cost per click and cost per acquisition-based ads, not just CPM ads. So all of this is probably going to go down in the next like month or two. If you haven't signed up for this, go to ChatGPT or openai.com/advertisers, go sign up, get in there. There's only 600 advertisers who have gotten access up until now, apparently. So more coming soon. Yeah. Okay. And then a couple of other pieces, switching a little bit more to like B2B and maybe B2C as well. So Salesforce got some attention this week where they've launched this thing called Headless 360.
Yeah.
And this is essentially Benioff saying, hey, we've killed the entire, like not killed it, but like they've created a version of this thing where you never have to interact with the GUI, the graphical user interface, and the whole thing is just going to be API'd, which is, kind of leaning into the whole AI narrative in a pretty big way. Thoughts, reactions, given your
Oh
very
my God.
extensive
Pranav.
CRM experience?
Pranav. I think like this was a long time coming.
Mhm.
One, I think it makes a ton of sense. One of the biggest complaints about Salesforce, I think, is distilled down to how slow it is. No matter how much they've changed the UI, it's slow. It takes seconds for things to load, and it's complicated. You have to find the field that you're trying to update. And as a RevTech manager, it's also hard to manage because you have to manage the fields that people want, and people can't create things. And when they want to request it, they have to go talk to a human. So now Salesforce really is just a database, and the database can be updated by agents. Sales probably doesn't even need to know about Salesforce anymore. They just need to know that the tool is a database with the information. And if the rev kind of operator or the head of rev wants them to update their prospecting pipeline with information, then you define it in a markdown file and everybody gets that skill. And then at the end of the day, you can update all of your calls with the information you need automatically. So we're kind of moving away from the world that started Salesforce, which is where you have reps that are logging into this thing to find and search for information and to enter information. And now it's just a database, which,
Yeah.
I think like means a lot of things. Like one, I think for companies where they said, hey, Salesforce is dead, it might mean that actually Salesforce has new life because maybe it's like less expensive, easier to manage if you don't have a UI.
And just think about like the number of custom apps that you can just develop on top of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to happen. And I have a related story because this week, somebody on my team, shout out to Ram Bachu, who's a GTM engineer for us. So we pipe everything into BigQuery, and he built a Google App Script, I think that's what it's called, on top of all of that data. And he gives a weekly score to all of my sales calls, right? With like, here's everything that you did from MedPick. Here's what you should do in the next call. Here's the probability to close. Here's the estimated day that this deal is going to close, right? Just based on all the call transcripts. And it's a custom app. I have it bookmarked. I call it Sales Intel, and I can just every week on a Friday open that up, look at what happened in the last week, and prepare for the next week, right? Like you can create all these custom apps because all of that data is like neatly flowing into, a warehouse, and you could have a gazillion different apps. That was like what, coaching app? Maybe there's a different app about, custom landing pages for every one of those customers, like whatever you can think of, right? It's just, and I think that's where the world is going to go. Like Salesforce admins are going to be GTM engineers who are hooking up all these different things and building custom apps.
I mean, there's a million ways to do things now, right? You can build a
Yep.
custom app. You could still have had a Salesforce dashboard. You could put it in SQL and have Claude write a SQL script. You could put it in Hex and have AI write a SQL script for
Yep.
you. There's just, I think like people need to dispel with the idea of like the right way or the best way of doing things and think about like what is going to be easiest for me to do in the long run. And actually, this is where I think in the very long run, architects, as people who think beyond the initial entry point of like, okay, this just works, to how is a team of X people going to be able to achieve the same outcome? Because like the micro app works for you, right? And you're not really, as a small growing startup, you're not thinking about more than Pranav. And even if it's
Correct.
Pranav plus five, it doesn't really matter. But eventually, if Paramark's a 400-person company, a 1,000-person
100%.
company, now it actually does matter how you do things. And you have to make things accessible and easy. And there has to be knowledge about it. And like, if you can do it, everybody has to be able to do it. So I think like, what's kind of amazing and powerful right now is that for small businesses and solo operators, the best way to do something is the way that works for you. And there are a million ways to do things really, really well. I think for later stage companies, they're going to find out that go-to-market engineers and this new term called marketing engineer, which I totally want to talk about,
Yeah. Yeah.
those folks don't know how to architect systems for thousands of people. And the stuff that works
Very
really,
true.
really well for growth isn't going to work well at scale. And so I think we will inevitably run
Great
into that
point.
problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think, and I think that's, you've described Claude's opportunity and risk here really, really well, right? Which is horizontal software for very, like, it's an inch thin, but it's a mile wide because you can kind of address these 10%, 20% use cases for like large audience. And when you need real software, you're still going to rely on real software, and you need real architects and engineers and designers and PMs to make those things happen. So I'm totally with you on that. Let's talk about marketing engineer. Like, did Profound come up with this term? Is that it at their
Uh,
event?
I think a head of marketing realized that that Clay did this exact same thing with go-to-market engineering and said, "What if we do this?" For what it's
Oh,
worth,
smart.
for
Yep.
what it's worth, I used the term marketing engineer in 2019, and everybody thought I was dumb.
Sure.
And before that, marketing technology existed as a term, and
Yep.
before that, growth engineering existed as a term. I think, like again, look, I'm not contesting
But
it.
kudos to Profound, because I will tell you, like, I heard the term like 5 times last week after their event, and people around me were like, "Hey, like this term is awesome. Can I use this term? Like, should I be using this term to define who I am?" And I'm like, "Go for it, man. Whatever floats your boat, right?"
Exactly. That's exactly my point. I think that like it was great advertising. It was well done. His piece on LinkedIn was good. Even if I disagree with him being the first marketing engineering ever, I like a little too high on his horse in my opinion, but I think it was a great use of the term. And probably what's great for both Profound and for operators is that like if you're one of these people who's like a marketer who likes to vibe code and you haven't really been able to describe yourself to people, it's going to be an amazing way for you to describe that you're not a full engineer, but you're also not a pure marketer. You're something in
Mm.
between. You're this pseudo technical person. You're a ninja. You're able to deploy yourself and use tools and technology and AI to get work done.
I'm a
I just,
little bit worried about it because I'll tell you why. I think when I think about somebody with an engineering title, I really do mean that, the app that I just described, right? You
yeah,
have the ability to actually publish an app end to end. And if you're not equipped to do that end to end, I think putting an engineering title is a little bit dangerous and is going to cause like just the hiring managers to make mistakes in hiring, because you're like, oh, I'm hiring a marketing engineer thinking that they can like go all the way to production with X, Y, and Z, and all it is a lovable app. I'm sorry. Like that's not it, right? So
this is the
um
risk. This is the risk. For what it's worth, I mean, all this comes down to the fact that there will be some people out there who will overuse that term and they will burn other companies and they'll burn themselves, right? Like I have deployed into many client organizations where somebody hired a go-to-market engineer who was not a real engineer and deployed a bunch of stuff and didn't think about how to connect it. And it's an architectural mess to fix afterwards. And it costs them $100,000 or more between tools, technology, people, and contractors. That will
Yep.
continue to occur, and that's going to be exacerbated by people using the marketing engineering term. At the same time, if you actually are pretty technical, like you and I are fairly technical, I
Sure.
used to describe myself as a really bad engineer because I actually have an engineering degree. I went to a coding academy and I learned how to code, but I'm not a very good engineer. And like in any version of the world prior to 2019, I would never have called myself a software engineer because I would be shamed for it. Like I would literally
Mm-hmm.
be rocked. People would pelt me to death for
Mm-hmm.
doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But now with AI, I'm actually pretty close to being a good software engineer because the thing that I could never do well is I didn't have 7 years of writing software experience, but I knew APIs, I knew object orientation, I knew how servers worked, I knew how HTTP works and JSON and all the core concepts that you want in a basic software engineer. However, I think like a lot of people who are using AI right now don't have basic software engineering understanding
Correct.
and they're calling
Correct.
themselves an engineer. And this is also the reason why I'm like, all the stuff that I teach, I always start with, let's just start with the basics of coding. Because if you understand the basics of coding, you're going to actually be able to call yourself an engineer a lot and have like more confidence in yourself because you have the primitives there.
I think that's the difference, right? I actually think it would have been easier if they, or maybe more effective if they called themselves like a marketing coder. I don't know, something
Yeah.
something something that's less engineering heavy. But
What if I
anyway,
become like a growth
um,
hacker? Have we used that?
exactly, hacker, marketing hacker. Oh my God. Uh, all right. Okay. One other piece before I want to wrap. So this has been a long episode. Canva launched a whole bunch of stuff, and I didn't realize they've had 5 acquisitions in Q1 of 2026.
Wow.
SimTheory, Magic Brief, Mango AI, Dooley, Cavalry, and then this one you're gonna like. A company called Orto. Orto is basically, I think the previous name of this company was Autopilot, and they
Mm,
were essentially competing with like the HubSpot and the MailChimp for like lifecycle marketing and email marketing. So, and they launched a whole bunch of new like AI stuff and Canva Code 2.0. It's just, I didn't realize how much AI Canva has been building and launching. And there are people who like really swear by Canva as like their main way of operating. Like it's got sheets and, you know, docs, and I'm just like, Canva code. I'm like, what? This is a thing? And they're doing like 4 billion in ARR. They have like almost 300 million active users, monthly active users, like bonkers.
I want to ask you an honest question. What have you used Canva for?
In the last 3 years, I
Uh-huh.
haven't used it at all.
Okay. So what do
So,
you
and maybe before that, I was using it for like very basic, like social media asset or something. And then I gave up on it because I was like, I'll just use Figma. I like Figma more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's interesting is like I feel like Figma is designed for designers and Canva is designed for marketers. And like this happens in every organization is that oftentimes marketing actually needs design assets, but they're not the same design assets as the product design assets. And so design with kind of, apostrophes on each side is like they're designing the product in a tool like Figma. And then marketing will like need stuff and my experience has always been design complains about it and never wants to help marketing do their job. So then marketing has to go out and hire contractors and other people to help them do the design work for marketing, which is ads and HTML for emails and social posts and all
Mm.
the things that go into the external world that are not inside the product. And so I've always thought of Canva as being really a tool for those people. But what's interesting is like it's a piece of non-technical marketing surface area. There are other pieces of technical marketing surface area, like High Touch, I think is technical marketing surface area. And they're doing a lot of AI stuff around like let me pull all your ads from Meta and then help you resurface existing one. But you have to create that somehow. Where do you create it? You create it in a tool like Canva. And
Mm.
so I think it's interesting that a lot of these companies are basically starting to cover big swaths of the marketing, almost like, you know, kind of surface or the area that encapsulates marketing. And in some ways, they're like doing the things that HubSpot just doesn't do. I would almost argue like it would make a lot of sense for actually HubSpot to acquire a tool like Canva because then you can build the project doc, you can create the design, you can deploy the ad, you can write the email all in one spot. They're covering this really important piece of what eventually goes into HubSpot. And HubSpot has like landing page editors and stuff, but like they don't have a design thing to start with.
So, okay, let's look at this. HubSpot's revenue is
40 million,
3
40
point.
billion, right?
No,
No.
no, no, revenue, dude.
Oh, revenue.
3.1.
Yeah.
HubSpot revenue is 3.1 and Canva's revenue is 4 billion.
Canva's making more than HubSpot.
Kind of wild. Yeah. That's at least what the public reporting is. So it would be a merger of equals than a real acquisition, which is wild to me.
Which is wild to me that Canva is as big as HubSpot, bigger than HubSpot.
Yes. Yes, exactly. All right. On that note, we're going to bring this to a close. It was a long episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Episode 21. Austin, what are you going to do for the rest of the day? Are you going to rest?
I'm going to rest. I'm going to go get my bike fixed so that I don't have the same problem again. I need some food. It's going to be an amazing weekend. And then tomorrow I'm going to run a half marathon, my typical prep. And then in November, we're going to run together. It's going to be great.
That's indeed right. I have my run day tomorrow. I think I'm way behind you. I'm going to do a 3 mile, but time
Great.
it. And then next week, we're going to start ramping up. So it's going to be fun. All right, folks. Have a great rest of your day whenever you're listening to this. And tune in again next week for another episode of GTMN. See y'all.